Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk today. The topic is All Rise, and it is based on the essay that I wrote this week, which is probably the most enraged essay I have written thus far. And I do want to say that I'm going to talk about things today that are, if you have littles, like little small children around, it's probably not a good talk for them to be in the background. So there's my little disclaimer for you. But I really did hesitate to publish. I had some fear and anxiety because I am so kind of beside myself about what is happening in this country and the kinds of conversations we are being forced to have because of things that are being said. And I am someone yoga means union. I've been practicing yoga for over 30 years. I'm always trying to walk through the world thinking about the way my actions, my words are impacting the people around me. I never want anyone to feel alienated. I'm leading a community here. I've been writing and teaching and for so long, for so many years, and so much of what I have done is online, which is just something that sort of happened in my life, not something that I was expecting. And so I understand when I am, whatever it is that I'm doing, speaking or writing or teaching, that there are going to be all kinds of people who might come upon the things that I'm saying. And I'm always trying to think about all of that. I don't want people to feel like they are not included, but there are certain things that are being said that just you absolutely have to push back. That is my perspective. And so I was writing about internalized misogyny and the patriarchy and all kinds of, I was writing about it in a personal way because I wanted to share my perspective growing up in this culture. And obviously, we don't all grow up in the same. I grew up in New York City. I had the parents I had. We were all like different, but I can only speak from my own experience. And so I grew up with a very, I think, sort of traditional idea about women's roles. And my dad was, and I've written about this a lot and I've talked about it, but he's a womanizer to a degree that still to this day, I'm 53, I really have never seen anything like it. Like he took it to Olympic levels. And unfortunately, he really kind of made me his like wingman, and I've described it as like his wing child, which is actually not a thing. But my parents got divorced when I was 4. And this was in the 70s. I was born in 1971. And I started going back and forth between my mom's and my dad's. And that didn't happen right away, but that is eventually what happened. Now, this was my dad's second marriage out of 4. And so his first marriage, he had wife, son, daughter, and he left his family when his son was 14 and his daughter was 16 because he met my mother, who was 19 at the time, and they had an affair, and he ended up leaving his family and marrying my mother. And according to her, they were blissfully happy for like 4 years. And then she got pregnant with me. And during her 7th month of pregnancy, he started cheating on her. And she found out when I was 3 months old and told him, like, if that's it, like, end it now or we're done. And he, said he did, but he didn't. And then that behavior of his continued. And eventually, after my maternal grandmother died, my mom, that was it. She was done. So that I was 4. And the next time I saw my dad, which was, I think, a few months later, I think a few months went by while he was getting himself settled somewhere else, he was already living with the woman who would become my stepmom eventually. And she was a year or two younger than my mother even. So what ended up happening is that as time went on, he would pick me up from my mom's, or he would pick me up from school, and then we would go to some quote unquote lady friend's house. That's how he always described these women. It's my lady friend, so and so. And he would park me in front of the TV. He would go into the other room with whatever woman it was. And then we would go home to my stepmom, who would have dinner on the table, and she would say, "What did you all do after school?" And he would say, "We went to the museum," or "We went to the playground." And I would be quiet because I had learned that if a woman called the house, my stepmom would go into the bathroom and be sobbing all night. And my dad had taught me that it's better not to hurt her feelings. I'm not doing anything wrong. These are friends, I'm rehearsing, whatever it is, but she won't understand, just like your mom didn't understand, just like my first wife didn't understand. So I was growing up, and this again is starting when I'm 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way until I was 13. And I really that is when I started to understand what I had been told was not accurate. But for those first several years of my childhood, the message I was getting from my dad is that women are clingy and demanding and emotional. There was a lot of eye rolling and kind of like elbowing me, like he and we were a team, and I could understand these things in a way that the other women in his life just didn't. And he called me, his angel and his princess. And he would tell me like, "Oh, you're such a good listener and you're so mature and smart for your age. You're special." And I was learning that, my function and my job for him was to listen, to be nurturing, to be loving. Sometimes he would cry in my arms and he would say he needed to be free and why couldn't these women understand? He couldn't commit. And I felt so sorry for him. I really felt like he was the victim of all of these selfish women, needy, demanding women, possessive women who, if they would just share him, everything would be okay. That is the, those were the lessons that he was imparting. And I was, of course, you don't question this stuff when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, it doesn't occur to you. You don't have any life experience yet. It wasn't until I was like 13 that I started to understand, wait a second, he is not the victim here. He is the perpetrator of a lot of pain for a lot of women. And I started to understand why he really didn't have a relationship with his daughter or his son, barely, anything to speak of, and what had happened with his first marriage, what had happened with my mother. My mother started to talk to me at a certain point about what had happened. So just the picture became wider for me. My perspective changed, and I was having my own experiences as a girl growing up in this society, in this culture. And I wrote about a lot of things, which I'm about to talk about, which are, not pretty. And maybe it was partly growing up in New York City. I loved growing up in New York City, and I want to say that, it's one of my favorite cities in the world. My heart will always be in New York, and that will always be home. It's my hometown. there are some of the greatest things that you learn growing up there is that people come in all shapes, colors, sizes, and some people are incredible and some people are probably not people that you want to invite into your inner circle. And those people, it's again, any color, shape, size, gender, whatever it is, that's not what it is. It's just people are, you learn that. You don't have to be taught that. You see it on the street all the time. It's a melting pot. And I love that. And I loved growing up in that energy, and understanding that without even having it explained. So there are amazing things about it. I think also it was the 70s and I was a latchkey kid. There were a lot of times I had a single mom. My mom got out there. I've talked a lot about difficulties between me and my mom that had to do with her alcoholism, but I'm going to tell you, this woman at 28 with a 4-year-old, whose her mom had just died, my dad had left. I think my dad she genuinely loved him, and I think he really, really broke her heart. And I don't know that she ever fully recovered, and I think it caused some stress between the two of us. I think that she consciously or unconsciously kind of blamed me for the end of her marriage. And so, but she got out there right away. She got a job. She kept a roof over our heads. She went right to work and she got it done, so I was watching that too. And I think she was looking, she was hoping she wanted to have a husband. I think that she was searching for that. And so there were many, many times where I went to my mom's after having been at my dad's for, 3 or 4 nights in a row, where I just missed her and she was going out on dates. And I think part of it was for her, she felt at that time in life, her best option for making us safe and secure was getting married again. So she was very much on the hunt. But the bottom line is I watched her for my entire life work. She worked relentlessly. She was on top of things. She was the reason that I did have a roof over my head. And so I was watching that. And I think as I was growing, as much as there was a lot of pain there between us, I also understood that, a lot of respect for her in that way. And a lot of sadness. I think that, I think she did have a lot of rage that I understand so much more now as a grown woman. So some of the things that happened I wrote about in the essay, but when I was 8 years old, this is the first experience like this that I had. I was in 3rd grade. We went to Central Park with our art teacher, and I sat down with my best friend, and we were supposed to sketch a tree. Pick a tree, and you're going to sketch it. So we're sitting there, we're cross-legged, we have our little sketch pads and our colored pencils, and we're drawing this tree, and we're laughing and we're giggling, whatever, having a good time. And you're looking down to draw, looking up at the tree, looking down to draw, looking up. And I do not remember how much of the tree I had drawn, but I looked up and there was a man standing under the tree with his pants down, playing with himself, with his tongue hanging out, staring at us. And we both looked up at the same time, saw this, were terrified, jumped up, pads flying, pencils flying, and ran screaming for our teacher. And nothing, there was no, other than we all left the park. I remember that she gathered us all together and we left. That was it. There was no conversation that happened after at the school or at home or with our parents. It was just never mentioned again. And I remember not knowing what to do with that, not having words for it, not understanding what had happened or why it had happened or what he was doing, nothing. And because there was no conversation, I think it was just left. It was just left there. And how do you make sense of that? You can't make sense of that as a grown woman, let alone as an 8-year-old. And not long after, when I was 10, I was on a New York City public bus and just sitting, as you do, is sitting in one of the seats, and there was a man across the bus. And I made eye contact with him, as you do. And he looked down in his lap and then looked back up at me and winked. And so I looked, and he opened his coat enough to show me his erect penis. And the feeling was that he had involved me in some secret, between us now. Like I had unwillingly and unwittingly participated in this experience that I didn't want and didn't understand. And I remember being really scared and embarrassed and ashamed and looking away instantly, but also just not understanding why. And I remember my eyes welling up, like crying, because I just didn't understand, and wiping my eyes and feeling like, I didn't even want to show him that he had affected me that much. And I don't think I even bothered to tell anyone that time, because nothing had happened the last time. So it became a thing of like, this is just something that can happen. Men can just expose themselves to you, and that's it. Like, that's just a thing. And it continued. And so I think when I was 12, I had taken my brother sledding in the park. My brother was about 2 at this time. And when we came back, this man held the door open to the building. And I knew you weren't supposed to let people into the inner lobby, but because he got to the building first, I thought, oh, he's going in there and he's just holding the door for me. And so I went in and opened the second door, and he held that door open, and then he went and held the elevator door open. And I've got a toddler and a sled and whatever, and we get in, and he halfway between floors pulled his pants down and exposed himself. And I'm like terrified and crying, and I have my brother, who I'm taking care of, which I didn't even include in the essay, and just pushing, like, trying to get that elevator door to open. I just remember feeling desperate and scared and confused. And, this is like, it continued. It was not, and in the meantime, there are stories being read to you, right? Like fairy tales about the prince coming to save you, and the knight in shining armor, and movies, and all of it, right? You're getting fed these very different, you're having one experience, and then you're being fed these other messages that, that is what you are. That's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for the man to come and save the day. And meanwhile, the men that you're actually seeing in the world are terrifying. And the other thing that I didn't, and not all men, I don't know how many, I feel like the good men are not going to need me to say that. I feel like the good men out there are going to be upset listening to this. They're not going to need that reassurance that I understand it's not all men. But I don't know, and it's like, my dad also had a flash temper. So you could be talking to him, I could be talking to him, and everything would be okay. And then suddenly he would explode in rage. And when that happened, his face would turn like red, purple, and he was a yeller, and his voice was booming. And it would happen so fast that even now when I think about it, it is wild that he even had the time to take a deep enough breath to explode at that volume. And when he would get angry, I would get scared, of course. Like my heart would race, I'd have a fight or flight reaction. And beyond the rage, he also had other tells, so if I was trying to talk about something that he didn't want to talk about, it was very clear on his face. His face would cloud over. Sometimes he would look victimized. I remember very clearly, for example, being so excited when my mom got pregnant. She got remarried when I was 8, and she got pregnant when she had my son when I was 11, almost 12. I mean, my brother. I do that a lot. My brother and my son, because I think I have such a big difference in age that 11 years, 12, I almost have more of like a maternal relationship with my brother. But I was so excited when my mother got pregnant. And I remember the day that my dad picked me up and I came, bounding out of the house and I was like, Mom's pregnant. I'm going to have, a brother or sister. Like, and he was instantly upset. Like it just, just not, was not going to join in to that joy, and immediately said, that I can't have any more children, right? Like I had a vasectomy, and I did know. And I knew that because my stepmom was devastated. My dad went and did that without talking to her about it. And so there went her chances of having a baby if she were to stay with him, which she did. And she had no agency. There was no conversation. There was no respect given of like, how do you feel about this? I think I'm going to have a vasectomy. I don't want to have any more kids. It was just done. And so I did know about that. And it instantly turned the tables. We're now talking about him. And we're talking about, that situation, and no longer talking about the joy or excitement I was feeling about having a sibling. So he was very clear about the topics he wanted to talk about and the things he didn't. And the topics he wanted to talk about were mainly him and his feelings and his situation. And, it's not to say, I think there were certain things that he was proud of, like, if I was doing well at school or I wrote a paper or a story or brought home some artwork, like I would get positive feedback from him on that creative stuff. But that was about it. And other than that, it was sort of like all him all the time. That was the channel. And so I was learning, that like, okay, if I want to not upset him, not have him cry in my arms, not have him, and he was always the victim. So like I learned, not to bring up anything that would potentially hurt his feelings. If I asked for anything as a little kid, if I said, oh, that teddy bear is so cute, or, oh, that's too dear, it's too dear. And I'd realize like, oh, he doesn't have the money to do that. And now he feels badly that I asked for something that he can't afford to get me. So I stopped asking him for things. And I mean, it just goes on and on, but I was being taught very clearly what I was to do. If I wanted approval, if I wanted love, if I wanted affection, then there were certain things that I needed to do and understand. And he normalized objectifying women. He told me he liked his women skinny with long hair and big boobs. This is not a normal thing to say to your daughter, ever. It's just not. It's not a normal thing, really. That's for you. Just keep that to yourself if that's like, no one needs to know that, and certainly your daughter does not need to know that. But this is the kind of thing, or if he would see a woman on the street, he would tell me, oh, she's beautiful, look at her. It was not correct, but this is the dad I had, and these were the lessons I was getting. And then I'm having my own, right, okay, the messages are coming in about the knight and the prince. And then you go to weddings as a kid and you're watching the dad walk the daughter down the aisle, and who's giving this woman away? Her, I am, So it's like, what is happening, right? Like, and so you're just trying to figure it out. And as I got older, things got worse. Men on the street got worse. And so I have written about this. I wrote about it, in fact, just last week. But a man grabbed me on my way to ballet. I was 13 at the time. I had braces. And he did the same thing. He went into the building ahead of me. And I was aware of him. And I had a strange feeling, like I didn't feel totally safe. And remember, by now I've had a few scary experiences on the street and in life with men. So I do remember feeling uncomfortable, feeling unsure. But he walked in ahead of me, and then he started going up the stairs. And so I thought, okay, it's fine. Like I'm overworked. I doubted myself. I didn't trust my intuition. And so I decided I'm going to run up the stairs. I'm going to pass him. I just want to get away from this. I want to get into the ballet studio. And the second I passed him, like literally the second I passed him, he grabbed me. He grabbed me from behind. He had one hand over my mouth and one hand, you know, between my legs. And he pulled me up against him. I didn't understand totally what was happening. I was, again, fight or flight. And he said in my ear, "Just don't move, okay?" And he was, rubbing himself up against me and trying to open my pants. And I realized, at 13, like, I'm in a fight for my life right now. Like that's what's happening. Something kicked in for me. And I elbowed him. I think it was also the question, because he said to me, "Just don't move, okay?" Like it was a question. And I think as soon as he introduced this idea that I could either say yes or no, it was like a full no. And I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't said that, okay, like question mark. But I do think that is what clicked me into action, because it was like, hell no. No, like, no, it's not okay. And no, I'm not going to let this happen. And no, like, no. And so I elbowed him, I bit his hand, I got away from him, and I went backwards up the stairs. I remember not wanting to take my eyes off him. I did not want to turn my back on him again. So I was, was facing him. And I remember for a split second him staring back at me, and he looked terrified. I was wailing. You just, no, like you wailing and yelling and going backward up the stairs like a crab. And he turned and ran down the stairs and out the door. And I went into the ballet studio. I didn't even have words, but they knew. I think I got out like a man, and that was it. And there were these two male dancers went flying out the door and down the stairs. They went out they went out onto Broadway, but he was gone. And one of the female dancers was there comforting me. And unfortunately, when they called my mom and told her what had happened, she was 3 blocks away. She did not come to get me. I don't know why. I'll never know why. This was not the kind of conversation that she and I could ever have. If I had asked her that, she would have felt like I was criticizing her, blaming her, and she just would not tolerate that kind of conversation. So I don't know why, but I know that it was devastating and that I needed her. And that's part of what I was writing about too, is this sort of internalized misogyny that begins to happen as a woman growing up in this culture too. I do think that my mother was enraged about this stuff. I do. I think she was beside herself with rage that there were men in the world who were going to do this kind of thing. And she'd already been through it herself. So, but I think her response to that rage was to somehow, I don't think she meant to, but the way that it felt to me is that she was turning it on me. And that was really painful. And there was a day on the street, I remember, I think I was probably about 14. And I remember when I was wearing this Betsy Johnson Lycra dress that had a built-in bra. And she, as we were walking, some man passed us, and I don't know if he said anything or he was staring, whatever, but she turned to me angrily and said, "You need to wear a bra. When you don't wear a bra, your tits shake and men get hard." That's what she said to me. And I didn't even know exactly what that meant, but I knew I was being blamed. And that is a very confusing and devastating message as a young girl, trying to figure out what is happening and what is this me? Is this my fault? Like, what is going on? You start walking by construction sites and men are yelling things that you don't even understand yet what they're actually talking about, but you understand that it is demeaning and embarrassing, and no one on the street does anything. The men on the street walking by do not defend you, do not tell these men to, STFU. They don't do that. No one does anything. Sometimes you'll make eye contact with a woman and there'll be something that looks like sympathy or solidarity. But as a girl trying to figure this out, you just don't you don't understand. You can't understand. What it feels like is these things are happening. No one is doing anything. I'm not safe. I'm only safe if a man has mercy on me. Then I'm safe. Otherwise, I have to be really careful in this world all the time, even on my way to ballet, even on a public bus, even at the park or like everywhere in the world. I have to watch myself because no one is going to help me. That is the message that we're getting all the time. And whether you're like consciously aware or not, these are the waters we're swimming in. And so that is, that's just some of what happened for me. There are more things that I was writing about boys at school and what I was observing, and just the way that we culturally accept boys run around, they're loud, boys will be boys. I heard that so much growing up, even a lot from my own mother, but even like female teachers at school kind of like accept it. It's like a sigh. Sometimes they laugh along or they roll their eyes. There's a different standard. Boys walk into the room like they own the space because they do. They're, yelling at each other in the hallways and high-fiving like they own the place because they do. And I remember so many times in my life. Now, part of it is my own stuff that I was going through. I had a lot of confusion and pain in my childhood trying to figure out what was happening with like the alcoholism at my mom's house, which was nobody talked about it, wasn't allowed to be, mentioned, and with the womanizing at my dad's house. And I didn't feel like I could share that with anyone. There were no adults in my life that I could go to and say, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is like normal or not normal. I just know that I'm starting to really not like be okay. And so you're getting all of these messages and you're watching all this stuff happen. But I would be the kind of kid, like if I got called on in class to read or to answer a question, my voice would shake, my heart would race, my hands would shake. And yet I'm watching all these boys just like raise their hands, and speak and kind of laugh and maybe not even know what they were going to say and not have any stress about it at all. Like raise their hands to talk for like 3 minutes and basically say nothing. And meanwhile, if I ever were to raise my hand, which I did infrequently because I had so much anxiety about taking up space, right? I didn't think I was supposed to do that. That when I would share something, I would have checked it in my head like 3 or 4 times. Is this thing that I'm saying, first of all, am I right? Am I getting the answer right? Is what I'm saying like interesting or useful or, smart? I would really like check myself before I raised my hand. And, and I did not experience that with the boys in the classroom. I was writing about when I was in 10th grade, I had lent this boy in my class. I thought he was my friend. I had lent him my notebook. He missed like half of class or something. So I lent him my notebook because we had a test the next day and he needed to copy down the notes. And he was a good student. Like we were friends. So anyway, I gave him my notebook and I just said I need it by the end of the day so I can study tonight. So the end of the day comes and I had to go, and I probably was going to ballet. I had to go, and I was standing outside the boys' locker room, which obviously you couldn't walk in, but I called in. I called his name, and I was like, hey, I need my notebook. I've really got to go. He came out, and there was a little classroom that we called Room 0 on the bottom floor of my school, and I had gone in there. He needed like to put his bag down on a desk to get the notebook out, but I didn't realize he was enraged because I had called his name into the boys' locker room. So he threw his bag down and he picked me up off my feet and flung me. And there were kids around, and some close friends of mine saw it. Like I went flying and I hit desks on the way down and my wrist was sprained. And when I was crying. I couldn't understand what he was doing. And he threw my notebook at me and, stormed out. And I went to the principal's office on my way out with my friends who had seen this happen. And I was crying. I was sobbing because I was in pain. And I was also stunned. And the principal was very much like, I'll talk to him tomorrow. I'm sorry that happened. I'll talk to him tomorrow. So the male principal, I'll make sure that he understands he can't do this. He's probably just upset about something. So I remember coming in the next day thinking, well, surely he's going to be suspended. His parents are going to be called, something. Nothing. I had my arm in a sling and this kid just walking around. Nothing happened to him at all. So the message is nothing is going to be done for you. No one is helping you. There is no knight. There's no prince. No one's coming. Like, you're on your own, and the rules are different. They're not the same for boys and girls. That's the message, certainly, that I grew up with. I'm not saying everybody grew up with the same messaging. I'm just saying this is the culture that I grew up in. And, when I was 16, I'm hesitating about whether to share this or not. But when I was 16, I had another experience happen. I'm not going to go into detail, but I was overpowered. And I did not get away that time. And it was devastating. And when I confided in my best friend, I confided in her first. I told her what had happened. She said, "You flirt too much." So she basically said, "It's your fault." And I put myself in a situation with someone who I thought was a trusted family friend and turned out not to be. And then when I finally told my mom, she believed him when he said that it was consensual, and it wasn't. So it was devastating. And it was unfortunately, it was a very painful moment in my relationship with my mom. I really felt like sort of an iron door closed, that kind of feeling of just like, wow, this is bad. This is going to be tough to recover from. And it was really tough. And she did apologize to me eventually. And she did tell me she believed me, but it was like years later. So it was unfortunately like a lot of damage at the time when I really, really needed that support. And so I was talking about internalized misogyny and what happens. And obviously, part of why all of this is on my mind is because I'm watching what's happening in our country right now. And I normally, in normal times, whatever those are, because we haven't seen them here for a really long time now, if we were just talking about like two political parties who had different ideas about big government versus small government, right? That's what it used to be. It used to be that like the Democratic Party was about like, okay, what big government, like how do we help, right? The government's job is to help the states and, help people, and what are the federal programs we can create to make things easier for everyone. And I'm talking about not even like from the beginning of time, because at a certain point, like way back, it flipped. Democrats were more conservative and it flipped. So, but I'm talking about, let's say for, the last 50 years, it's the other way. And then Republicans became very like, okay, small government, right? Small government. We're not helping, like that's not the job. And so if that's what we were talking about right now, I wouldn't be talking about it. I'd just be like, okay, like I believe that, everyone in a country should be cared for. Like that's the job to me. And maybe other people feel like that's the state's job. It's like, okay, if that's where we were, I'm okay. If it's working and the states are showing up for their people, then okay. But that's not where we are. That's not what's happening here. And I probably don't need to tell you that. Where we are right now in 2024 is we have a situation where, I mean, there is a party that just very out loud is saying women do not deserve the same rights and respect as men. The end. A woman cannot be trusted to make deeply personal decisions about her own body. The government needs to tell her what she can and can't do. And for a long time, 1973, we had Roe v. Wade, right? And we lost that because, and I feel like most people who are listening, reading, tuning in to me already know this, but I have been shocked. I got into a conversation, and I'm trying really hard when I engage with people online to be respectful. But I literally had a conversation with a woman online who said, "What are you talking about? We lost Roe during the Biden administration." Okay, so my brain exploded a little bit inside. We lost Roe because the former guy appointed ultra-conservative justices to the Supreme Court. And he said he wanted to overturn Roe. And that is what happened. That is, a part of what is going on here that I think is a little bit terrifying is that people are in an echo chamber. So they're only reading what they want to read. They're only believing what they want to believe. So here's a person who thinks that it is Biden's fault that we lost Roe. It is not. That is not what happened. And I think anyone listening, whatever, knows this already. But it is very much a result of the justices, and these Supreme Court justices, they have lifetime appointments, right? There's a lot of things that need to be revamped. But that is how we lost Roe, because of the former guy. And he wants to come back for another round. And he has now chosen a running mate who is saying things like people without children don't deserve to have their votes counted the same way people with children do. And the message there is very clear. It's a woman only has value if she's a baby maker. If not, then she doesn't have that same value. People with children are the only people who have a stake in the future of the country. Now, when someone is saying things like that, or calling the other candidate running for president, who is a woman of color, a DEI hire, that is both sexist and racist. It is. And so here we are. This is where we are at this moment in time, where I am like, I can't not call this out. There's no way to be quiet now, because if I were to be quiet now, I wouldn't be able to look my children in the eye. I wouldn't be able to look myself in the eye. There comes a time where you just have to say things for what they are. And you don't have to like everything about a candidate running for office. You don't. But when you start to question someone's qualifications, who, gone to law school and was attorney general and was vice president, like, this is not, the qualifications are not, that's not even on the table. This person is unbelievably qualified, especially against anyone, but especially against this person who is a convicted felon. This is just reality, and it is not because the DOJ has been weaponized. It's because this person has done criminal things. The end. And also, some of those things have been sexual assault. So it's like, we cannot, at this moment, I can't not say what things are. We have got to be able to talk about this stuff because the stakes are so high. The ticket, the former guy and this J.D. Vance, they are coming out strong. They're telegraphing what it is they want to do. And they definitely want to take women's reproductive rights away. And I don't know how I can say this, but, I don't know how I can say it any better or differently than anyone else. But you can be pro-choice and also really hope that abortion is only going to happen, in the most extreme circumstances. You can feel that way if that's what you want to do. You know what I mean? That's fine. It's not about that. It's about saying to yourself, do I respect a woman to make deeply personal decisions about her body the same way I respect a man to? End of story. And if you can't say, yes, I respect women the same way I respect men, I don't know what to say. If you are a woman, I really want you to think about that, because the only explanation for a woman to be voting against her own interests is that she has so grown up in a culture that is telling her your place is in the home. It's usually women that are growing up in that conservative, ideology. And I have compassion. I do. I understand. We can only know what we know. I grew up hearing all the stuff I heard. And for till I was 13, I thought that was real. I thought women were objects and they should be sharing, and they were demanding and needy and emotional, and my poor dad, because that's what was being fed to me. You're only going to know what you know, and you know what you're being taught. But at a certain point, hopefully, you pull yourself out of that and you just start to question, why is it when a woman is strong and successful by anyone's standards, do people start talking about her sexual history or say she's unlikable? What is that? She's shrill. She's unlikable. She's ambitious. That's a bad, being ambitious is bad. That is internalized misogyny. And you see women doing it with other women. And I think what it is that, when you have been through experiences like this, where you're being taught from the beginning that your value is something you need to earn. You need to earn your worthiness and your place in this world. You can't just walk into you're not going to just walk into a room and take up space. You have to earn that space, and you have to earn it the right way by being a good girl. You need to be nurturing and loving and giving, and you need to smile. Why don't you smile more? And you need to look right. You need to be thin and pretty. But and you can be hot, but don't be slutty. And I mean, it is, and now and also you need to bring in the money. And you're probably going to be doing a lot more of the housework and the household, calendar, and making sure everybody has what they need. This is a good thing to step back and question what is happening. What is happening right now? Because now we're in 2024, and women are expected to contribute, financially. A lot of women are the breadwinners in their families. And there's a lot of conversation going on right now about, even in heterosexual homes, even women who are working as much as their husbands are doing more of the household stuff, and talk about the mental load of that. Women are not paid equally in our country. A woman and man can do the exact same job, and she can do just as good of a job, and she's not paid the same amount. I mean, just start asking yourself, what is going on here? And what direction do I want to be going in? And what kind of world do I want for my daughter, if you have one? And if you don't, what kind of world do I want for my friend's daughter? This idea that people can only have a vested interest in the future of the country if they have their own children is the most self-absorbed, self-centered worldview. It's shocking. It's the assumption there. I mean, they really are. They're letting you know this is how they think. This person who is running for vice president with a candidate who's super old, by the way, and could very easily not make it through a term. This could be our president that we're listening to right now, the childless cat ladies dude. Um, he is holding firm on that if you don't have children, you should not get as much of a vote as the people with children. This is a thing. I mean, just Google it. You don't have to believe me if you're not, if you're not sure. It's out there. He's not being quiet about it. He doubled down on it today. So, I think it really is. It's a moment in time where if you are, and again, there may be things that you are like, I'm upset with Kamala Harris because of, fill in the blank. Like there's a lot of people that, or I would say two things to you. Really research this, whatever your issue might be, really research it and make sure that what you're saying is true. Because I did that. I did that. I went and did a deep dive to see, like, are any of these things that are being said, are they true? Are they real? And, you really should, like, Google and see for yourself. You do not have to love everything or agree with everything or be happy about everything with any candidate ever. There has never been, even the ones that I voted for, that I ran to vote for, because I was like, Obama even did things that I was not happy about or in agreement with. So it's not required that you have to like everything. That's not where we are. It's like, do you want women and men and girls to have equal rights in this country or not? And these people are talking about a national abortion ban. And J.D. Vance has said, and again, you can Google it, he doesn't believe in exceptions even for rape or incest. So, and why don't y'all go check the legal marital age in some of these states? It is unbelievable. It's unbelievable what is happening right now. And it is 100% a turn backward for women, for, gay, queer, for all of your gay, queer friends, all their rights are on the line. Look that up too. See what Kamala Harris did when she was Attorney General. Take a look at that. Like, start educating yourself, because, people are going to throw everything at her right now. That's what happens. That's what it is when you sign up and you run for office. But really check. Don't just accept what people are screaming on the internet. Go and search it out. You don't have to take my word for it either. I have gone and really tried to see. And there are some things that I hope she stands up and gets a little louder about, and so, yeah. But am I voting for her? Oh, yes. And this whole thing, there's a thing going on in the yoga community too, and it's something I'm going to be speaking to. There were a lot of people during the pandemic who got very upset about vaccinations. This is just to give a little bit of background here. I'm going to shift into the wellness world, yoga community in Los Angeles for a minute, because this is a community I've been in for 30 plus years. I will let you know, when I had my children, I did a lot of research about vaccination. That felt like a lot of vaccinations really early for me. And so I did research, because I was a little bit like, God, they're so tiny. Do we really want to do like 38, vaccinations in the first 2 years? Are there any we could slow down? Could we slow down the schedule? Like, what are the ones that, I really want to make sure we're doing, and what are the ones that maybe we could hold off on for a little while? I did all that. I am someone who is really careful about what I put in my body. I think we have a big problem in this country with big pharma. I think we overprescribe, we treat the symptoms. So I am not someone who's just like, oh, whatever the government tells me to do, I'm going to do. That's not me. But do I think there have been vaccinations that are like polio and measles, whooping cough? I think these are really important. And there are a lot of people, particularly in the community where I am in Los Angeles, who were opting out of that stuff. And guess what? We had like a giant upsurge in measles and whooping cough. And that is not, polio. These are diseases that we have almost eradicated with vaccination. But if you opt out, like, I don't know what to say. That starts to be a risk for the people around you, let alone your own children, depending on where you're traveling and what you're doing. So I'm not someone who just does things blindly. When this whole conversation about vaccinations during COVID, my mother was dying of ALS. I could not get on a plane and go to her because I was afraid I was going to bring COVID with me. I waited until I had my second vaccination. And the second I did, I got on a plane to go be with her. My kids, I was afraid. I was afraid. Like I was. How can you not be scared? It's just normal. You don't want to make a decision for your own children that could potentially cause them harm. No one wants that. I understand. So the people who opted out, they're opting out because they were afraid. And the people who opted in because they felt like this is the best decision I can make. That's fine. But what happened is a whole bunch of people in the wellness world moved into that like anti-vax space. And now we have RFK. And RFK Jr. is, I am sorry, I have read the stuff. This is a conspiracy theorist, okay? He just is. I don't know what else I can tell you. So giving your vote to a third-party person, Jill Stein, RFK Jr., these people are not going to win. And I understand there are people who feel strongly that we need to get rid of this two-party system. You know what? I agree. But we're not going to be able to do that before November. And so this is where we are right now. And you've got to be thinking as clearly as you can, which of these candidates is the likeliest to do most of the things that are in line with my ideology, and where they aren't, which of these candidates is the likeliest to listen if a large number of constituents are saying, we want more action on this. Which of these two parties is likelier to give me more of what I want and some of the really essential things I need? That's what you have to be asking yourself right now. Do we need an overhaul here? My God, do we need an overhaul here? But what is on the line right now is who are we going to be in this country? And are we, please, if you are confused about reproductive rights, this whole thing, I got into it with somebody also. And again, when I say got into it, I am doing my best. Like, there's no point engaging with people who are clearly that you're not going to change their minds. They are like, they have an ear patch on. You're not going to get anywhere. But there are people who are saying things with like a question mark at the end. And those people, unless they're being, insulting or whatever, you might be able to give them some links. There was a woman earlier today who was saying, well, why is everybody so worried about like a national abortion? All it's saying is that the states can decide. Okay, take a look at Kate Cox in Texas. Just look that up if you are confused about what happens when you leave it to the states, what that looks like. Take a look at Kentucky. Take a look, and then you don't have to take my word for it. Just take a look at what happens to women in states where the state decides, it's a heartbeat, it's 6 weeks, or there's a ban unless the mother's life is at risk, and then they don't even really clearly clarify what that looks like. Women are being sent to the parking lot of hospitals, women who are having miscarriages, where the baby is not viable and their lives are on the line. They're being sent to the parking lot so that they can wait until they are close enough to death that the doctors inside feel like, okay, if I give this woman a D&C now, there's no way my medical license is at risk because clearly she's about to die. Like, I can prove that this was life-saving, and that's why I did it. This is not right. It's not right, and it's not okay. And I really can't imagine there's any woman who wants this for other women in this country and other girls. You know, there's a 12-year-old girl who came out, and like her stepfather had been abusing her for years from the time she was 5. I was going to say I could start crying, but like I am, 5. And she became pregnant at 12. At 12 years old. And these people want to make it so that a girl in that situation has to have that baby. This is not okay, folks. It's not, and everything inside of me as a yoga teacher, as a human being, as a woman is just absolutely like, no, no to that. That's not okay, and you may feel, and this is part of what has happened here. I mean, there's so many things that have gone wrong that have led us to where we are. The minute alternate facts got introduced into the conversation, that is not a thing. There are not alternate facts. There are facts. One of the worst things that's happened here, aside from, managing to appoint all these ultra-conservative Supreme Court justices, was an erosion of people's faith and trust in journalism. And that's a playbook move. That's a move for people who are trying to take over. It's the minute people are like, well, I don't know what to believe anymore. One side saying one thing, one side saying the other, people can just use AI and make things up and like, oh, that's not true. And oh yeah, they're saying he committed all these crimes, but they're just weaponizing the DOJ. No, listen, I grew up in New York City. Okay. We all knew the former guy long before the country did. When he came down that escalator, I laughed. I was like, oh, please, are you kidding me? Everyone knows this man is zero ethics, zero morals, treats women like objects, total player, total liar. I laughed. I scoffed. I was like, there is no way anyone's taking the Apprentice guy seriously. And the joke has been on me. It's been on me. I was wrong. So, and I know there are so many people in our country, people who are living on the margins, and they are not okay. And that is what has happened here. We need to be taking care of those people in a way that is like going to be a long-term solution. We need to invest in infrastructure and jobs and all kinds of things that are certainly not going to get attention with the former guy coming back for a round 2. We already saw what happened the first time. So I could not be quiet, and I cannot be quiet. And I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to say it like I see it. I was scared to hit publish on the essay this week. I really would love for you to read it if you haven't, because I included a lot of links. That way you don't have to take my word for it. I've got links to everything that I am saying from the person's mouth. So you don't have to believe me. And they're links from the most neutral papers we have. It's hard to find actual journalism anymore. It had, and I was talking about one of the worst things that has happened is the erosion in people's faith in journalism. And then the other thing that's happened is there's journalism and there's media, and entertainment. And just because a show has news at the end of it doesn't mean it's objective. And that's on both sides. Let's be clear. That's on both sides. So it is really hard to find objective journalism anymore. And I mean anywhere, but I have included links in my essay this week that are from the most neutral papers. And I'll tell you, sometimes the international papers are like the BBC is not a bad one to go to when you're trying to figure out what is actually happening in this country. um, there's just too much on the line now. And everything in me, that's what I was trying to say, as not just a yoga teacher or a human being or a mother or a woman, there's no way for me to not start calling these things out. And yeah, I'm just, that's where it is. That's where it is. And it is really, really time to, for all of us who are, who are women in this country, to really think about what we've been taught about our worth and what we have accepted without really examining it. Why do we take our husbands' names? Not everyone does, but a lot of people still do. Why? Like just a lot of things. Like, why are we being paid less for the same job? Like, what is that? Like, really think about it. What happens for you? You think it's a joke when someone is talking about childless cat ladies? It's not a joke. It's a horrible thing to say. And by the way, childless cat ladies, they get things done. It's just, it's more guys whipping it out. That's what it is. And I was saying in the essay that none of us who have grown up in this culture are surprised by the things that they're saying. We're just surprised they're saying them out loud now. They're emboldened. It's not even like the quiet part anymore. It's the part that they're just loudly telegraphing. And I really hope you take it seriously, because they're not joking. They're not joking. And if you depend on men who think this way to have mercy on you, you are just, you're in for it. They're not going to. They never have. They never will. And, I'll just round it out one more time and say, obviously not all men. But you know what? I'm going to say one last thing. There are too many straight, white, upwardly mobile men who are checked out. They're like, I've twice in the last, 5 days, I've had 2 straight, white, male, upwardly mobile friends of mine casually in conversation say, oh, I think he's going to win. And I don't even know how to describe what happened in my body both times. It was shock, because one of these guys is here in California, and the reality is he's like, I think the other guy's going to win, and my vote doesn't really matter anyway, and whatever. And I'm like, okay, so, and his reason, and I'm going to share this with you, because I have a feeling there are a lot of people, and I mentioned it in the essay. There are a lot of people who are, they feel the left has gone so far to the left. It's like the people on the right who've gone so far to the right. And okay, you know what? Like, we got to look at things and understand why some people are just like not, they're not on board. I think so many things are getting pushed under the term wokeness, right? And those things, some of those things are rights of all kinds of people, not just women, not just queer people, not like just any marginalized group of people. It just is all getting pushed under. Like, this idea they don't want to teach critical race theory anymore. Really? You don't want kids to know about the civil rights movement or slavery or the Holocaust? You don't want kids to know about that stuff? You want to start to like figure out what you want to, that's part of Project 25, by the way, is starting to legislate over what can and can't be taught in schools. And these are the people who like to ban books, and lots of them. So this is what I'm talking about. There's some really, really scary stuff on the line here. And there are people who've just kind of decided that, like, the whole everything on the left is under this, this woke whatever. You want to take a look at that too, because there's a lot of things that are, you can push under there that are like, they're really, really important. And maybe there's, like, I don't know, maybe there's a few things in there where, okay, we could say, like, maybe that's a little bit much, whatever. I don't care. You got to be looking at the big picture here. What happened for me with my friend who said, I don't really, my vote doesn't really matter, and I think the other guy's going to win. I said to him, if I thought the other guy was going to win, I would not be okay right now. Like, I don't think you understand what just happened in my body when you said that so casually. I am shocked, and I'm shocked that you just said that to me that way, because I am a woman. I have a daughter. The idea of this person coming back for another term is terrifying to me. And you said it like you've already accepted it as a thing that's going to happen. And you're not even planning to vote. So what happens for me as your friend is I feel like you don't care about me. I feel like you don't care about me. You don't care about my daughter. You don't care about any of the women in your life because you're safe. Your rights are safe. I'm like, you have nothing to worry about. You are a straight, white, upwardly mobile man. You are fine. The rest of us are not fine. And the fact that you don't know that or don't care about that is devastating to me as your friend. It's devastating to me. And I had another really close male friend of mine, say that to me casually on the phone yesterday. And it's like, listen, fellas, please, if that's what you think, do something. Do something. Get your friends registered to vote. Talk to your male friends. Like, I don't know, how come we've had so far already, there have been calls for black women for Kamala Harris, black men for Kamala Harris, black queer men for Kamala Harris, white women for Kamala. Where are the white men? When is that phone call happening? Someone let me know. I have a lot of white men. I'd like to sign up for that phone call. Why is the bar so low? What is going on here? I mean, if that is really what you think, as a straight, white, upwardly mobile man in our country, that the other guy's probably going to win, shrug, because you're protected, like, don't talk, like, please, get your head right here and care about the women in your life and the other marginalized groups of people in your life. Care. Please. Like, wake up. The rest of us are terrified. Don't, go about your business, taking up space. Help. Really. Or I don't want to be friends with straight, white, upwardly mobile men who are not engaged. I don't. I'm not. I'm done. I'm done. So that's where I am. I was a lot, it's highly likely I'm going to lose people, and that's okay. It's not like I don't care, but I care about saying the things that are in my heart a lot more, and knowing that I'm doing and have done everything I can to, point the needle in a direction that at least has some hope in it. You might not get everything that you want. I'm not asking you to, throw a party if that's not how you're feeling, ever. I'm never asking anyone to, edit out their feeling or force things down or fake it, ever, or try to perform some kind of cognitive dissonance. But I am saying to you, the choice right now is super clear. You're either going to vote for a party where you have some hope, or you're giving it away. And if you're giving it away, do not understand. I really, really hope you think long and hard, especially if you're a woman, about what is going on, what is going on for you inside, and what you have possibly believed about yourself and your worth, because it's the messaging has been in the waters that you are swimming in your entire life. Just, this is a great moment to like swim up on shore by yourself on a little island and think about it, just really examine how much internalized misogyny you may have. I love you. I'm sending love to all of us right now. I know this is a very difficult time. I know that you have, there might be things that you feel really strongly about, or you please, if you can have a respectful conversation, I will have that conversation. We can talk. I will not, hate speech, all that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm blocking that. But if you want to have a respectful dialogue, or there are things that are bothering you, absolutely, I am open. But I really, really, I feel really strongly about everything I said today. And I'm sending you love.